All right, so the numbers from yesterday weren't as good as prior days. 71 new cases. Active cases are up by quite a bit. Although good news is still no new deaths and hospitalizations are still very steady. Again, they tested about 7,000 people yesterday, so we're testing a ton of people. We're at about 10% of our population. So again, we're testing a ton of people. I mean, you look at the numbers out of Canada too, they're not that bad. I mean, you look at Ontario, just 157 new cases yesterday. I haven't heard any bad news out of Saskatchewan or Manitoba. They've both been pretty much fully reopened for like a week now, maybe a little more. I don't know what the exact day was, but like I mean, the Alberta is really the only province that I mean, still then, like I think pretty much all the other provinces, the active cases are going down, but I'm not exactly sure on that. But you look at the none of the other provinces are having spikes in numbers. Alberta seems to be a little all over the map. I mean, we have days with like 20, 30 cases. We have days with 60, 70, but the active cases are still relatively steady. You need to continue to wait to see a trend. I mean, my guess is today we'll have a very small amount. It seems like that's kind of how it goes. Is we'll have a high day, we'll have a low day, we'll have an average day, and everyone freaks out on the high day, and everyone thinks we're out of the woods on the low day. So I would wait and see what the trend is like. And again, we don't have anything to worry about until the hospitalization numbers go way up. We're having more new cases than recovered cases, at least most days, but it's not by much, and the hospitalizations are still very steady. And again, one of the main reasons why I'm saying that there's nothing to worry about is you go over to the numbers out of the states. Again, they had another day over 40,000 cases. There's been I think 4 days, and three of them have been within the last week. But again, you look at the deaths. The deaths are still very low. I mean, 346 deaths. That's the lowest amount. I mean, they had a couple days in the 200s, but that's the lowest amount since like the third week of March. So again, the new cases are almost exclusively due to young people, largely asymptomatic people that are, the new cases are being discovered. So again, there's not a whole lot to worry about. Not a whole lot to worry about. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is like I say, there's a strong push to re-lock down. There's a strong push to make masks mandatory. And again, I've brought that up, but it makes no sense whatsoever that if masks are so effective, then why in the world did we lock down in the first place? I point that out, the Japan example out to people all the time, and everyone's like, oh, they wear masks in Japan. Well, then why in the world did we not lock down and do that? Like again, these people are so stupid. It's not even funny how dumb these people are. Like Japan, like I say, never locked down. All they did is, yep, social distance, wash your hands, and wear a mask in public. That's basically all they did. They didn't lock down. Japan's the death number, the even the case numbers and the death number. I mean, Japan, I don't even think had 1,000 deaths, and they have a population that's like 3 times as big as Canada. So yeah, like there's no reason whatsoever. Like anybody bringing up locking down at this point is beyond, and I don't care who they are. I don't care if the world's foremost leading expert. They are a quack. They are a quack because we know there's a mountain of evidence that shows that the lockdowns had no effect on the cases, and the effect that it did have was negative, and the fact that, I mean, you look at Vancouver, or not Vancouver, BC. They had the most drug overdoses they've ever had in a month in April, I believe. Suicides are way up. People not having cancer diagnosis discovered, and not only that, this story came out of, this is literally Toronto Public Health admitting it, so no one can possibly argue this is a conspiracy theory, in saying individuals who have died with the virus but not as a result of the virus are included in the case counts in Toronto. And then Ezra Levant responds by saying, so you've deliberately inflated the numbers. If someone had the virus but was hit by a car, you called it a virus death. No one should trust you again. And this is the problem too. And this is just another thing too. We've seen this out of the States too. I talked about that like over a month ago, that probably 2 months ago, that you literally had funeral directors admitting that they were marking people as dying from the virus that weren't dying from the virus. and now you see this out of Canada too. I said at the time too that, oh, the number, it's probably the same thing is happening in Canada. Now again, this is just Toronto, but I mean Toronto is the biggest city in Canada, and I mean they probably of all the cities had the most deaths. Maybe Montreal, I don't know, but Quebec and Ontario by far the hardest hit. It's probably safe to say, but I'm not 100% sure. Toronto has had the most deaths, especially when you include the GTA. I would guarantee it if you include the GTA, because there's so many of the suburbs there's millions of people literally in the suburbs. So this is just safe to say that again, more and more evidence that we don't need to be as worried from this. That if it was so bad, then why does the government include this kind of stuff? I guarantee you this was a top down thing that hey, um, or it's a money thing too that they get more fun. I mean, like you look at the states too, they get more funding if they include it as a virus death, and maybe even in Canada too, for all we know, they may get money from who knows who. But anyway, if this is so bad, then why do they have to manipulate the numbers? Like it makes no sense. This is blatantly obvious that the virus wasn't nearly as bad as what the government wanted it to be, because the government wanted it to be really bad so they could pass more draconian laws to shut things down, to take more power. And I mean, it didn't take long before anybody with half a brain recognized that they were lying to us, or they're just grossly incompetent. I mean, there's always that option too when I say the government's lying to us. But again, I kind of refuse to believe that, because there's no way that someone like me can be more knowledgeable on the topic than people in the government that literally have experts, multiple experts at their side that they can go to for advice. So it's pretty safe to say that they're just flat out lying. Like they're just flat out lying. And again, the experts have no credibility when it comes to this kind of stuff too, because you see tons of experts calling for relocking things down, calling for making masks mandatory. And again, these are the same people that said, "Oh yeah, masks don't work," in March and into April. Like they're the same people that said that. I don't remember seeing one prominent expert when Tam came out and said masks don't work, don't wear a mask, come out and say, yeah, she's lying. But I know people who I listen to that said that, yeah, that said that. And I mean, technically, I think, some of them were doctors that I follow, but none that are, high up, and people that the government would say, yeah, this person's credible. Um, and again, this is just the problem with that kind of stuff, is that the government has been lying. I mean, in a nutshell, here, the government has been lying to us all along, and the only way that they can keep maintaining the lie is to manipulate the numbers. So again, this is just proof that the death rate is much lower than we originally thought, and that's before you even take into account asymptomatic cases. When you take into account again, I've been saying this all along. It already came out to be mostly true, that being people under the age of 50, death rate being lower than the flu. Before it's all said and done, the overall death rate, even when you include like people in their 80s, probably will end up being lower than the flu. I don't, the exact number right now varies from like zero point 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, depending on the country and the area and whatnot. But before it's all said and done, I think that, and the other problem too is that when it's all said and done, they'll be including these numbers in that total. So again, I mean, it's probably what, 5, 10%, maybe 15% of people, just off the top of my head, they're marking as dying from this that aren't actually dying from this. So again, you can probably take a good 10%. I mean, we've had what, 8,500 people die in Canada. The real number is probably around 75 to 8,000, give or take. So again, the government is just flat out lying, I guess, is the main point here. And it's scary. It's scary to think about too, that they can just have bald-faced lies and so many people just not care, and so many people trust them too. And this is the other big problem too, is that if the second wave really is bad, which I highly doubt, or let's just say down there, within the next 10 years, there's another virus that actually does have like a 3, 4, 5% death rate that we actually do have to be worried about, because again, this one's just the flu, and it's a little bit more contagious. I mean, it's as far as how it goes. Um, I mean, it's a decent amount more contagious. I guess the point here being is that down the road, if there really is something we need to worry about, we're going to have a boy who cried wolf scenario. That the government told us, oh, yep, this is the doomsday virus. There 2 million people in the States are going to die, and quarter million in Canada. I mean, those were the projections, at least the ones from the States and the ones from the guy who, was going to see his mistress, breaking quarantine out of the UK, who's literally their top doctor. Um, the people aren't going to care. I mean, a lot of people will because they'll do whatever the government tells them. But anybody who's remotely paying attention will be like, yeah, you guys lied to us. You lied to us through your teeth the last time around. I don't care what you have to say. And that's what's probably going to happen. Now, again, if there's enough time in between, people have short memories, but if it happens for rather soon, people will remember it. I mean, that's the other thing, too, is that at no point along this will I support a lockdown or even consider the topic that thereof, because the government's lied to us ad nauseum. They've been lying to us the entire time. Again, so at no point will I support a lockdown for this. I don't care how bad it gets. And this is from Alberta. So basically, the UCP out of Alberta, which again I'm not a huge fan of. I just support them based off the fact the NDP in Alberta are literal socialists, borderline communists. So yeah, even if the UCP are pretty well dead center, which they are, again, people thinking they're far right are absolutely beyond insane. I mean, they just announced they're going to run a $20 billion deficit next year. That's not something that actual conservatives do. So again, the UCP are a literal centrist party. If you want to say they're center right, fine, but people calling them far right or even anything to the right of a center right, I mean they're pretty comparable to where a liberal party would have been like 20, 30 years ago. But anyway, the UCP want to have more referendums on referendums on equalization, on a GST or a PST, or HST. I don't even know what they would call it, but um, and the NDP came out and be like, yeah, this is. I mean, the NDP literally said it's an anti-democratic power grab. A referendum is the very definition of democratic. Like, again, these people are so beyond insane that no matter what the UCP does, and again, I'm not a huge fan of them. I'm just calling a spade here, and that the NDP are they're in such a bubble, such echo chambers. These people that literally think that something that is by definition democratic is anti-democratic. Like, that's literally looking up at the sky on a day with no clouds and being like, yep, the sky is red. Like, how insane can you possibly be, NDP? And this is again why people who overly critical of Kenny, and again, I understand where they're coming from. Again, the problem that I point out too is that the alternative is literal socialism. Like, that's what will happen if the NDP get in power and stay in power long enough, especially under Justin Trudeau, because there's no pushback at a federal level. The last time they were around, I believe, was Harper was in power for part of that. I don't remember what the exact years were, but I mean, the UCP got elected or re-elected in 2018, so the NDP probably, I think it was around 2014, got elected. So at the start of that would have been under Harper still. So yeah, the problem with the ND, and not only that too, they've gone even further to the left since then too. People think that, oh yeah, they're kind of socialistic, but they're not that socialistic. But the problem too is that they've gone even further to the left since that amount of time. I mean, you look at Justin Trudeau in 2015 compared to right now, he's clearly moved to the left since then. Like, he's clearly even gone off even further off the deep end. I mean, back then that was a relatively moderate Justin Trudeau, at least compared to now. And the NDP, if anything, have moved even further. So again, that's why I tacitly support them. Now, the caveats to that is the only thing that would get me to consider that is they continue to push back against the gun control, which they're doing. They continue to push back against the stupid climate change, carbon tax, climate garbage, which they're doing to an extent. They want to cut taxes and regulations. Again, and they're doing all that kind of stuff. So, although I personally I would be handling things probably quite a bit different, but again, they are doing most of at least the basic things that I want to get done. And the other problem too, when it comes to the Wexit people, when it comes to the PPC crowd, and again, I'm 95% on board those people. There's some things I disagree with, but um, if a Wexit movement or a PPC, whatever it is, actually catches on and actually gains some steam, I think that a better way of doing it would be the stepping stone route. And people, I don't think we're going to go from an NDP led Alberta and a Liberal led Canada to Wexit. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think the more realistic way of doing things is continue to to elect actual conservatives, not the neoliberal like McKay types, um, and then go towards the more actual principled Wexit or PPC platforms from there. But again, that's kind of a video that's different out of itself. It would take me a while to explain all the nuance within that. But um, the main story here being is that the NDP really are that bad. Like I don't like constantly trashing on the left. The problem is that they continue to dig their own graves basically, and that they continue to dig themselves deeper and deeper and deeper. In that they need to be pushed back upon. And again, this is every reason why you should not. At a federal level, maybe too. Like I mean, there's so much nuance within this discussion that I don't really have time to get too much into it. But anyway, this is from Stefan Molyneux. You know, again, there's violence going on pretty much across the world, especially the Western world. I mean, not a lot of the rest of the world is already was violent. So, and yeah, in London, there's, you know, this is the thing too that you have mainstream media outlets. Yeah, 15 police officers injured in largely peaceful night. Again, like just the cognitive dissonance and the doublespeak of these people is absolutely insane. But Molyneux says the London I grew up in was incredibly safe until mass immigration. Now, again, mass immigration is destroying the Western world. I mean, you look at Canada too. We've gone completely off the deep end. I don't know. I don't think a right of center, even a centrist party, will ever get elected again. And again, this is the other reason too why I'm not big on. I mean, I'm big on, but I'm not big on completely ignoring actual conservatism in Canada anymore, because the alternative is socialism. Like, and this is the problem with the Wexit and the PPC movement, is that assuming that there's some actual conservatives, because that's the one thing that I do agree with the PPC and the Wexiters on, is that if the conservative you're voting for is just a neoliberal or a neoconservative, yeah, they're not worth voting for. But if they're actually going to push back on this, on the gun control stuff, they're actually going to want to cut taxes and regulation. They actually want to push back on the carbon tax. That's enough to get me to vote for them, even though I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that they actually believe. Like, but the problem is this too. Like, and this is something that I think we'll look back in history on. That assuming that they don't burn and destroy all the history, that the people who aren't on the left should have spoke up and should have been made their voices heard more. Because the one thing that the left does is that they stick together no matter what, no matter how crazy things get, no matter how, you know, insane they appear, they will stick together. And that's the problem with the right too, is that because people on the right actually have a moral compass, they refuse to just tout the party line no matter what. I mean, that is the one big difference between the left and the right, is that the right actually has a moral compass. And people who try and argue that, it's like, no, you're insane. If the right didn't have a moral compass, everybody would have just blindly voted for Scheer in the last election, but they didn't, because they recognized that Scheer was a neoconservative. He was like a 90s liberal basically. Um, so that's the problem when it comes to that stuff. So Gerald Butts tweeted out last week a kind of a tone deaf map of the U.S. that um, I don't think it was the worst thing in the world, but the problem being, I guess, is that, I mean, it was incredibly tone deaf, and I mean, kind of derogatory towards whites and I mean, people on the right in general. And the main point here being is that if someone on the right tweeted out something like this in the reverse, or let's say some Trump advisor tweeted something like this out about Canada, they would have been raked over the coals. There would have been calls for their resignation. They may even have been forced to resign. But again, Butts does it, and there's literally no pushback from the left whatsoever, like literally none whatsoever. So very crazy to think about. I mean, not only that too. I mean, the guy's kind of crazy too. So anyway, again, speaking of Canadian politics too, a lot of stuff here too. Now again, Aaron O'Toole's been kind of talking a lot that he plans on defunding the CBC. He also plans on getting rid of the carbon tax. Now again, it is possible that this is just him pandering to the right to try and win the leadership race. And when once he does win that leadership race, he'll move back to the center. I don't know if that's the case, but again, if he actually sticks with these principles, then I'm not sure too, because there's some stuff about him that does concern me, and I don't really want to get into it today. I mean, there's definitely some stuff that concerns me about him. Um, as far as I can tell, Sloan would probably be the best leader. Lewis would be decent too, in the fact that it would be pretty hard for them to make the racist or sexist argument for obvious reasons. I mean, they would still do it though. I mean, guaranteed, if Lewis wins, they will still accuse the conservatives of being racist and sexist, even though they have a black woman as their leader, which is insane. But that again, that's what the left does. I mean, they're on record. You have many of these leftists calling Candace Owens a white supremacist. So again, it's they're not afraid to do it, regardless of what color your skin is. They'll call you a white supremacist no matter what color you are. But anyway, and then again, not that that matters too. Like this is something too that I've talked to. Again, racism is kind of exclusive to the left. It does exist on the right to some degree, but you look at history, you look at today. I mean, it's always has been, always will be the left that supports literal racist laws. But getting back to O'Toole here, if he is going to run at a federal level against Justin Trudeau on a platform of defunding the CBC, scrapping the carbon tax, and actually getting rid of it, not doing what Scheer wanted to do and replace it with something that was pretty much the same. Um, if he's going to push back on the gun control garbage, that may be enough to get me to vote for him and to advise other people to do for. But again, I'm not going to put my money on it. At this point, I'm going to remain skeptical, and the burden of proof is for them to gain the support too. But again, the alternative is very dark. We are headed down a very, very dark path if Justin Trudeau continues to lead Canada, and we have to get him out of there. And the most likely scenario probably isn't the PPC. Wexit is definitely possible. Again, there's many other problems with Wexit though. So um, anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. If you liked it, make sure to that like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal and email. I got linked in the description. Again, I appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last few things. Check me out on BitChute. Check me out on Twitter. Check me out on Parler. All the links are in the description, so you can find them all there.